we bring you these great start sessions. Tonight we have Dr. Harder. Thank you. I was supposed to say, I'm sorry. I didn't want to get it wrong. Just move the mouse and it should come up. And Miss Garshell, I wouldn't want to misname her. Us ladies, when we go change our names, we like to keep them that way. But tonight, the ladies are here tonight to talk to you about that transition from fiction reading to nonfiction reading, which is going to become incredibly paramount as your students move into second and third grade. It will consume about 3/4 of the content that they are exposed to. So without further ado, I'm going to give you to Ms. Garshell and Dr. Harder, and they are going to take you for the rest of the night.
All right, so like she said, this is Miss Garshell and I am Dr. Harder. I teach kindergarten at Deerfield Run, and Miss Garshell teaches first grade at Deerfield Run. We've been here forever. So some of the objectives for the night, side by side, we're going to talk about modeling first and second grade skills that are necessary for success. We'll provide some tools and ideas to have a good foundation for like the reading, for the nonfiction and fiction reading. And specifically today, we're going to kind of compare fiction and nonfiction texts. We'll identify strategies for understanding informational text and understanding why it's really got important information. No, you're fine. I wasn't ready. So, some of the target skills when you're thinking about fiction and nonfiction are asking and answering questions about the key details in a text. So like the main idea, the main character, the setting, what's happening, beginning, middle, and end. Those are kind of important details about the story. Identifying the main topic, describe the connections between two different ideas, and then know and use text features. Anyone know what text features are? Good, we're going to go over that. So, what is informational reading? Does anyone have an idea before I read this lovely Common Core definition? We'll share their thoughts. A book you read to get information, absolutely. So essentially the Common Core, which are the state standards that the curriculum is based around, they define informational text as a broad category of non-fiction resources. So biographies, autobiographies, books about history, social studies, science, art, technical texts, and things like that. So it's non-fiction, it's informational text. So you're going to learn something from it. It might not be so pretty about princesses and fairies and dinosaurs. You know, it might be about dinosaurs though. That's history, but it's more to gain knowledge rather than to entertain. So the definition between fiction and nonfiction: fiction stories are completely made up. They're fake. Their purpose is to entertain. Ms. Garshell has 2 examples of some fiction stories. You're going to read it in order. They have illustrations, they have settings, characters, there's usually a problem which results in a solution, and there is a beginning, middle, and an end. You know, whether it be one story or a series of books, there's always a beginning and end in the middle of something is solved. So nonfiction, what makes it different is it's real information. So whether you're gaining facts about animals, the planet, the earth, food, it's actual factual information. The purpose is to inform you, to gather data. You're going to read it in any order. There's typically not, book 1, book 2, book 3. It can kind of be in sporadic orders. There are usually photographs, which is kind of what makes it different. Some fiction stories have photographs in it. They're usually illustrations. An illustration is someone that they drew the picture. Photographs is like a picture of you or I with a real animal in it. That's kind of a key, usually, that tells you that it's an informational text. They have captions, labels, headings, charts, graphs, and all sorts of good information in it. It's not as, smooth reading as, a fiction story when you're talking about like superheroes and princesses and fairies and things like that. This has information and facts about bears. So essentially you kind of have to be interested about said book in order to grasp it. Any questions so far? So this is an example of fiction. The Diary of a Worm. It is about an insect. Well, it's not an insect, is it? Yes. But obviously you're not going to go outside and see a worm writing in his diary. So it is totally made up. Even though it's about a real, thing in the earth, it's in fiction. Okay? So it's going to entertain them. It's going to keep them focused. If they might find it funny. But this is an example of a nonfiction text. So you can see the difference was the first book had a illustration of the worm holding the diary and pencil. This has a picture of a turtle, kind of like edited and whatnot, but it says the ways of the sea turtle. So you obviously know you're going to open that and you're going to learn about sea turtles and what they do in the sea, maybe what they eat in the sea, their lifestyle choices, and things like that. So you're not going to see this turtle pick up a pencil and draw in the diary. You're going to learn something about the turtle. Does anyone have books like this at home already? What do you have? We have encyclopedia for our kids. Ooh, encyclopedia. Very cool. Anyone else? What do you have at home? Yep, that's what those. Those are my favorites. They're very good for little readers. Perfect. So you're already on the right track. So then these are kind of text features. You're going to find them inside these informational text. Okay, they've got all sorts of stuff. So you're going to see inside this the title. That's going to tell you what it's about. Now you might not see all of these in one book. Especially with the younger ones because they don't want to overwhelm them. And this is a level 3. So this one's going to have more in it compared to our level 1, where it's a lot simpler. What's nice is they're both kind of packing the same information, but one is geared towards, an early reader, and the later one is they're more advanced. They can take in more information and have to apply their vocabulary. So you'll see the title, the subtitle. There's the title page. A table of contents, that's really different from the fiction stories, because this is going to tell you what's on each page. You don't really get that if you're reading like a chapter book or a story. They're not going to tell you, on page 31, you're going to learn that the princess fly with the tree. You're not going to learn that. It's just going to tell you what information's in it. Then there is an index that tells you what page the reader can find certain topics. There is a glossary, which is usually at the end, right? With all sorts of information on it. And I think the glossary should actually go at the beginning, because when you're learning about nonfiction text, it's very word specific, like vocabulary specific to that text. So if you're not used to reading about animals and you hear the word habitat, it's going to confuse you. Like, what is a habitat? Why do I keep hearing this word? So if you're reading at home, you might want to skip to the back, go over these words in the glossary, and then start reading. So even though it's in the back, doesn't mean you have to get to it last. Great thing about nonfiction, skip around, go back and forth. But definitely look at these words because it's going to help with understanding. A lot of the reasons why they don't like reading nonfiction is they don't understand it. And so it's that content, especially if we have families who are English as a second language. It's a heavy topic to learn about. And if you don't know carnivore or if you don't know endangered, you're not going to be understanding what you're reading. So it's important to point these words out and don't wait until the end. nice to have pictures so they can get that visual connection too. There's also heading. There's the heading, which is like kind of like the topic right before the paragraph information. There's photographs. And they're pictures of the real life thing. There are illustrations, and they usually kind of show you information. But usually they focus on the actual real life pictures. But they're kind of, this picture is kind of comparing the size of the bear so that it has the illustration in the background. So it's got good stuff. And then and then there's the captions below the pictures. It kind of gives a little summary of what this picture is on that page. Any questions so far?
So lots and lots of text features. And it's important to kind of point them out as you're opening the book. Go through. What's your favorite picture? All right, let's read the caption under it so we get a little bit of information before we even start reading, because now you've identified something you're looking forward to seeing later in the book.
That'll help you keep them engaged. Because I know a lot of times when you're reading informational text, you might lose them. They can get a little bored. It's just not as fun as it's just not as fun as the stories about superheroes or Pig the Pug, where it's a dog named Pig and he's a liar. He does all this fun stuff. It's not as engaging, so it's good to point out all those pictures and talk about what the animals are and information so that they can stay focused on what the book has to offer. And then there's more. There's labels usually on the pictures. You can kind of point to like details in the picture, describing what parts of the animal, parts of like the lung, or parts of like the globe, all sorts of stuff. There's graphs in there. I don't know if they have them these little ones.
It all depends.
Yeah. But they could have like statistics and numbers, like there's a percentage this amount of animals here and there. They have to share that information. There's the table, same thing. They have maps in there, which is nice because then they can learn about the globe, where the locations are, maybe where food is growing, or where they can most find bears and things like that. There's usually diagrams which kind of explain the information. There's bold print, and usually the bolded words is the vocabulary words, and I want to say most of these you can find in the glossary. So if you're reading the text and you see the bolded part, there's usually more information in the back in the glossary because that word is important, and you want them to remember that information.
And this one actually puts them in little boxes as you're reading. So it's like, hey, if you forgot to check the glossary first, check this little box out because we're going to tell you what these words mean. So they added that for you.
Which is nice. Then there's italics. Same thing, it's kind of showing you what's important, emphasized in the text. There are bullet points. Again, more information, kind of talking them with vocabulary words. And then there is a stack of books and more lines.
Yeah. So it's a lot of things in this little book. So for our younger readers, them looking at this, they're overwhelmed already. So it's our job to help break it down and find things that they want to learn about. Because maybe starting off, they don't care about bears and people. They might not care about that topic, but they want to know, why is that bear eating a fish? What is the bear eating? So start with some of those things that they're interested in. Come up with those questions, and then we can kind of break it down. We can see, let's answer that question. So then they have a mission as to why they're reading, and they want to keep going, and then when they find the answer, they can kind of stop, take a break, and come back to it. Let's answer another question. This is not one of those texts we're going to hand to them, sit down and say, all right, I'll see you in 20 minutes. We'll go over your text. We got to break it down because this is a lot for them to be reading.
And one thing I pointed out to kindergarten families, this is not a bedtime story. It is not what you're going to pick up to read for them to go to bed. This is for learning. This is going to go with those homework activities. This is going to go earlier in the evening. The bedtime story should be entertaining, the fiction, like the interesting stuff. This is not a bedtime story. The Giraffes Can't Dance is a bedtime story.
But we we can use this as a segue into Giraffes Can't Dance, because then we can start comparing. We can say, all right, well, can giraffes actually dance? You read that book earlier about giraffes. Let's make that connection and let's learn that vocabulary. Or you can switch them around. Read the fiction one first. All right, let's see how much of this book was actually true. And then they've already saw, the different giraffes the animals with. They've seen what a giraffe looks like. And so they already have some foundation for when they're starting this one.
Kind of like a warm-up. Now they're engaged, they're a little bit more hooked, they're a little bit more willing to read this book that's packed with words and not pictures. So it'll help them keep them focused. So these are some examples of some nonfiction stories. So we're going to compare. What do you think? Is it fiction or nonfiction? Pete the cat goes camping. Fiction. You can kind of tell there's illustrations, and it's a blue cat. And I would love to see one, but I don't think those exist.
The shoes.
Yeah, but so she's wearing shoes, walking upright with the human. There's kind of cute. So this is an example of fiction. It's still one of those leveled readers. You can see it says level 1, but same thing.
All right, planets. Nonfiction. How do you know it's nonfiction?
Photographs.
Yep, you have the photographs. Usually anything with the National Geographic on there is a good clue as to this one's going to be a nonfiction book.
Yes. And these are really good. The kids like planets. I have found that. Is it fiction? Is it fiction or nonfiction? Nonfiction, how do you know? Yep, the National Geographic kind of gives it away. But it is a real picture of a penguin. It's not an illustration. It's not doing anything silly. But they can kind of tell you're going to learn something about penguins today. It's the inside of the book. Is it fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction. What gave it away? Content. Pictures.
The text box, the bold text, the context of this, the introduction, the title.
We're just quizzing you to see how many things you remember from what you're talking about. But yes, you guys passed.
Fiction or nonfiction? How did you know? It is an illustration. You're definitely not going to see a cat walking around in a hat like that. No, the kids will want to read it because they're going to know why is he wearing a hat.
How to make a monster smile. It is. Even though it's a how-to book, we can't make a monster smile. So that's definitely one of our fiction ones. But other how-to books, there's lots of them out there. Your child might want to know, how do you build an airplane, or how do you build a house or a car. I've got one student in my class who loves cars. So anything cars. So usually that how-to is a good indicator that it's nonfiction because it's going to show you how to do something. But you got to keep reading. The monster part, not so much.
So if you read a how-to, you might get stuck making something. So you know. You will. All right, fiction or nonfiction? It is nonfiction. What gives it away? Yep, the picture of the cow. There's the title. There's a little text box over here. The little illustration here, the comparing. I noticed they've got the bolded and they have italicized words. They're kind of emphasizing something in this area.
And it says I'm 4 weeks old.
Got information. And it's cute, Clever. Is it fiction or nonfiction? Correct. Why? It is Time Magazine, so that gives it away too. But I do believe this is a real picture of a beautiful snow-covered tree.
So we're also giving you topics to think about if you're thinking about your child and what can I encourage them to read at home? So think of some of these. These are some of our highlights in first grade, things that kind of draw their attention. So So if your child isn't already one of those that's very into a certain thing, like try some of these out and see where you're at. Because I'm sure there's some fascination that we can build upon.
Gotta do something. All right, this is the inside of the book. Is it fiction or nonfiction? It is fiction.
Once upon a time, there was a beautiful girl called Cinderella. Oh, Cinderella's not real.
I believe she is. It's minor details, but you can tell that it's illustrations. It's not photos. Even though it does, it could trick a little mind that's like, look, it's got lots of words right there. It's real stuff. It's not. It says once upon a time. Key factor. It's usually not real. Once upon a time, of course. We want it to be, but it's fine.
All right. So, as we were talking about earlier, you can do book pairing. So how we did giraffes can't dance and giraffes. You can pair them together so that way you get that nonfiction or the fiction and the nonfiction together. So that way, all right, we're really excited about this one, but we're going to add some informational text in there as well. And if you go on Google, they have plenty of pairings if you're looking for ideas. So that way, you got Diary of a Spider. All right, well, let's compare it to the real life of a spider. Because in the Diary of a Spider, he's going through his life. So now let's go read through the actual text. How much of it is the same? Was our spider friend making anything up in his life? But it gives you something to work together. So they work really well. And even, all right, let's pick one of these. And then, all right, I'm going to find one that goes with it. And even if you don't own all of these books, you can always go to the library, or you can find them online. YouTube has so many options. Epic Books, you go on Clever on your child's computer. There's lots of websites on there with free books. So you can just type the topic. I know when my kids use Epic, it'll give them fiction and nonfiction options when they just type, an animal or airplanes or whatever the topic is. So you can find them out there.
That's always interesting. I like the caterpillar and the butterfly because it's eating everything when you up to tell her story. But then is that all actually? No, don't think so. And my kids are usually fascinated with the fact he doesn't actually eat all that. What do you mean? Oh, here it goes. This is how he can transform into a butterfly. He probably can't eat a donut. Same.
So this is the part where our students seem to have the most difficulty. All right, we read this book, talked about facts, but now we're poems. How do you get them to talk about what they just read? Because it's not a beginning, a middle, and an end. There aren't characters to talk about. And you're going to hear them say, well, she did this. She who? The giraffe. She did that. Well, let's refer to them as their name. The giraffe lives here. The giraffe eats this. Because they'll try and do it. That's what they're used to when they're reading a text. They're used to saying she or he. So we have to break them away from that first. Refer to what you're learning about. Refer to the topic that you read about. Because when we test them, if they're able to identify what they're talking about, they get higher points versus just being able to say she or he. So once we get past that, then we usually ask them, what was it about? Guarantee you're gonna get, I don't know. You just read this whole book. How do you not know what it was about? Because it's a lot of information they're processing. And they don't necessarily know where to start. So start broad. Think about it as a big umbrella. What is it all about? So this one, it was about giraffes. All right, let's talk about some details. And this is where you're going to help them. Tell me something the giraffe ate. Tell me something where the giraffe lived. Tell me what it looks like. Focus on 3 categories. They might need to go back. They might not remember what the giraffe ate. So then we can say, all right, well, look in your table of contents. This is a great way to find those details of the text. If you're struggling, you're like, my kid's just not getting it. Main idea, right here, our title on the front. Details are all going to be in our table of contents. So that way it helps them focus. So, all right, you wanted to talk about what the giraffe looked like. Where are we going to find them? Well, their bodies. That's a great place to start. Let's turn to that page Give me a detail from that page. Some students are going to start reading word for word. But remind them, when we're summarizing, we're not reading word for word. This is you retelling me something. This is you creating something new. Now, if they start going out in left field, well, the giraffe had purple hair and he could run 100 miles an hour. Bring them back in, reread the page. You know, can you tell me where he's got purple hair at? Because I don't see it. And then, of course, oh, well, I just saw it on TV. All right, well, let's talk about the giraffe in our book. So that's one way we can check for comprehension. That's real basic. So start at the beginning. Then we can start going on to more in-depth. We can go over this book a million different ways. I would go into, well, what did you find interesting? What did you learn from the book? Some of them are going to be like, oh, well, you know, they eat this, this, and this. They live here. Others are going to be like, oh, no. Okay, well, let's go back into the book. It's always go back into the book. When they start giving me that, I don't know. All right, fine. Where was your favorite picture again? Can you show me that? Was there a fact on that page that went with your favorite picture? So being able to make those connections. Because they're more likely to remember the pictures because they don't have to read. But getting them to read and make those connections is where they're going to get the most bang for their buck. And then we can even keep going further. So, all right, we've read this book a few times. Maybe we read another book about giraffes. Let's keep learning. Or we can start comparing it to another animal. All right, we read our giraffe. Let's read our book about bears. Are they similar? Are they different? So now we have to start remembering facts from both books. So this goes to a higher level of thinking. Because yes, they can tell you about this one. They can tell you about this one, but we start putting it together, that's where we have to watch. Because then they're going to tell you, oh, well, they both live in a cave. Does the giraffe live in the cave?
Sure.
You sure? But they were friends. Because that's where it always goes. They're friends. I don't know friends. I don't think they were friends. Let's go back into the text.
That's how I think they're not in the same book, so they're probably not friends.
But look, I can find one over here where they're friends. All right, well, that's where we'll save over here. You can write a story and make them friends. But when we're retelling these, we're not looking for the friends. And then if you want to keep on going, what other questions do you have? That's where it takes it to this abstract. Well, I don't know. You told me everything about giraffes right now. We can keep going. There's more information out there. What do you want to know and how can we find it? So give them the opportunity to tell you, well, I can find it in another book. Or I can watch a YouTube video. I can go online. I can Google it. My kids know at school when we don't know the answer, we go on there and we're looking it up. So give them the opportunity to further their learning, to look for that next opportunity. That way it's not, all right, we read this book, we're done. Keep going.
There's all sorts of questions you can ask them.
And if you need these questions, in your folder on the bottom of the agenda for today, there's a QR code that you can scan and get all of our slides. So feel free to reference these questions later. All right, so how does nonfiction benefit them for when they get older? Well, unfortunately, they grow out of fiction. They don't read it as much as they get older. It's very content heavy. So starting them now, especially on our topics like social studies, science, we're already exposing them to that in the classroom. We don't necessarily say we're reading nonfiction today, but we are reading informational texts. It helps expand their vocabulary. So when they get older and they're learning more about some of these same topics that we're exposed to in the younger grades, they have that background. We don't have to go back through the glossary each time and reread those words because we've already heard. We know what a carnivore is. We know what a herbivore is because we've heard it. We can recall it from another animal. It helps with our second language learners, being able to identify the different parts of an animal in English. Okay, I know it in Spanish, but let me translate that into English. It helps build their vocabulary and make it stronger. And we start getting to real world problems. All right, we read a book about bridges. How do we apply that to our everyday life? Can you build a bridge? Can you apply this to what you're doing now? And it teaches them about the world that they're living in. It's awesome when they go outside and now that spring is coming and they see the different critters and plants and everything and they can identify it. I know last year with the cicadas, they were all about learning the facts about the cicadas. I didn't want to touch these things. I didn't want to see these things, but I had cicadas on a stick brought up to me. But they could tell you because they wanted to know. It was something they're interested in. So look at the world around them. What's something that is going on that's current that you can bring to them? And that way they can learn more about it. And it's a fun and exciting way that's not necessarily all the content information.
It's nice when they're asking questions. Like when you sent cicadas, I had mine there. Why is it white? Why is the shell here and he's here? Like why is what happened? So then we would go back and we'd look up. Well, I think it was white because it had just come out of the shell, and the hard part is the shell, and now he's emerged. That's why it's like that. They're like, oh, okay, makes sense. So it gave them that chance to ask a question.
All right. So this is our graphic of how it changes from using nonfiction and fiction in the classroom. So in elementary school, we're about 50-50. We do both topics. We're trying to make it fun, but at the same time, we're also balancing it out with that informational text. But if you notice, as they get older, there's more nonfiction and less fiction. So it's really important that we start while they're young, so they get the vocabulary, they get used to seeing text features, they build stamina for reading. Because it is a lot. I know, when you're in high school and you get that history textbook or you get that biology textbook, you don't want to sit there and read it. But if you didn't have that development growing up, you're really not going to be set up for success. So we want them to be exposed to it now, get the stamina, get the vocabulary, get the interest, and develop that passion for reading, because it does. It outweighs it. So we have to prepare them for the future.
They're going to be mentally prepared for the big books.
Or websites or online things. Or
correct. But it'll be
what have
nice
you.
because then they'll know how to use the tools in those big books, and they're not so scared. Well, I've read these before. It's a lot. It's a really big book, and it's very intimidating. But I know it has this, and I can use that to my advantage. They are exposed to it.
All right, so how are we going to pick a book for nonfiction? So those of you that said you had it at home, how did they come across these interests? Was it a gift? Was it something that they said, hey, Mom, I want this at the store? Or was it something they picked up and they just were interested? How do we get these books at home? Magazines, absolutely.
My son wanted to know how tornadoes are and volcanoes and all that.
Mhm. Awesome. Starting with an interest. Any else? You can always work them in as gifts, guys. I know those, baskets are coming. Throw a book in there. All about bunnies.
The last thing is amazing. I have this one series called Grabbed and it was like, what if you had animal hair? What if you had animal skin? What if you had a sharp nose? And inside of it, we talk about that one physical feature, like the nose of all different types of animals. How they all did something kind of different. They're all noses, but some are stronger, some are less. They have all sorts of information, and it was so fun to read. And it's a whole series, book after book after book, and everything after. The last bit was your friend.
And recommendations. Have them talk to their friends. Hey, what are your friends reading? What are your friends looking at? What did you see at school that you like that I can bring it home, and we can continue our learning? And usually the pictures are one of the top things that grabs their attention, especially the kids that are interested in whatever they like to, eat or destroy, or those gory pictures that you're just like, why are you going to read this? But it's caught their attention. So let's build on it. Why did they have this picture on the front of the book? Let's learn about it. And previewing it. It might not be the book for them. Yeah, Grandma may have picked it out because, Grandma thought they were interested in cars or trains, but no, we're interested in snakes and bugs and things. But We tried it, we looked at it, maybe we'll revisit it at another time. Take them to the library. The library is filled with books that they can just browse and pick and just find what they want to learn.
I was gonna say, when kindergarten goes into the library, they've got really to know how to read. So they just look at those pictures and they're coming back to me, look how great this picture is. I'm like, that is a chapter book. Please go put that down. I know it looks beautiful. It's fantastic, and you'll read it eventually. No, it's not how. Put it away in another book, it's something different. But it's good. That's why it's good to read, because they could end up with something that's so out of their league, and they're so stressed trying to read it. So, yes, the picture, you wanted to grab them, but then you open it. You never know.
That's the nice thing about digital books too. You have access to all of them, and you can look through it. You can find the different levels, and at the same time, you're not committing to buying it, but they can keep going back and looking at it.
Which is nice.
So it's not just books. They can have textbooks, newspapers. I know I saw somebody at the gym with a newspaper, and I was like, oh, hi. Magazines, biographies. Those ones we don't typically introduce in the younger grades. We talk about people, but biographies, they don't make a lot of them for younger ages. So if you can find some of the biographies that have the words that younger grades can understand, build upon that, introduce them to it. Because they like hearing about other people's lives, especially if it was a long time ago, and they're like, wait a minute, where's their cell phone, or where's the car?
Why are they riding on horses? What's happening?
Yes. So being able to introduce them to biographies are great, but that's definitely something we're working towards, because it does usually have a lot of vocabulary, it has a lot of content. Because think about your life, how would you put it all into, 10 sentences or 15 sentences? People have a hard time making a short biography and one that's able for our younger ones to understand. But definitely look for them, because they do have those text features and things in it that you can expose them to. All right, so we originally planned this to be your intake, but Danielle already laminated yours. So we're going to tell you how to play it, and then there's a different make and take that we're going to do in there as well. So this is our reading recap spinner. So you'll use a paper clip and a pencil to make your spinner. And then, depending on where it lands, that's how we are going to retell our story or our text. So if I land over here, we're going to share an interesting detail. If we land on the camera, we're going to tell what you learned from a photograph or illustration. If we land on the magnifying glass, we're going to share an important word and its meaning. Over here with the links, we're going to share a connection you made. So that's something maybe between another animal, maybe it's a connection between you, maybe it's a connection between two different cars, whatever you're talking about, make a connection. The heart, share a favorite part of the book and what you learned. And then the question, ask a question you have or share a part that is confusing. That's a great part to go back to. What is confusing? What don't you understand? So that way we can go over it. Because if we read this book or this part of this book and you don't understand it, we need to talk about it. And maybe it's one of those parts where you look up a YouTube video, because seeing it in action can change their perspective. So maybe they didn't understand what hibernating was. But you pull a book or you pull a video up of the bear that's hibernating. Okay, now we have a better understanding, because how can something sleep for so long and still be alive? Well, look, here's a video. It actually happens. Somebody recorded it. So it might be something you have to follow up with. You might have to, do your research to find something that connects, but be prepared to take it further. Because yes, we read about it, but let's also look at it in real life. So this is something I would go over before we read. These are some of the things we're going to talk about after we read. So as you're reading, pay attention, because I might ask you what your favorite part is, so that way they can start thinking about it. Part of the reading is making sure they know what they're reading and what they're looking for ahead of time. so that way they can plan for it. Now, if you have one of those friends who's nervous, who's going to be focusing, I need to find that one word that I don't understand, and it's going to take away from the meaning, then I'd maybe give them 2 or 3, or stop after a certain page and say, all right, find your word yet? And that way we can get it out of the way. So it's all about knowing your child and what is going to interest them or what they're going to fixate on, because some of them will, I have to find that one thing. And make sure you're picking a text that allows them to answer these. And if you know that one's not in there, all right, you know what? I know that this one's not available. We're not going to pick that one. So just setting them up to be successful. Any questions about this one? And it's also in Spanish on the back, so it's bilingual.
Any questions, comments? Okay. And I believe on the inside there is what we're going to make it the tables. There is a sheet, and I believe you pull it out. We're going to cut it out and kind of put it together as like a dice. It's going to serve the kind of same purpose of asking questions afterwards, but it's inside the folder. We're going to eventually move over there. So I'm going to let myself start getting to it. Building stuff. Or I know that they build a lot in there. I know there's animals in there. I think they take care of the animals, like to feed the animals. I believe they can build fires in there, things like that. Building like the weather and things like that. But building would be a key thing for Minecraft. Yeah, they really like Minecraft. Recently about building. So they'll like the idea of putting things together, how houses are built, how bridges are built.
Different materials, the
Yep.
rocks.
But yeah,
The rocks.
that's a good game.
All right. So in your folder, you also have the roll and response. So you have dice, and there's a little school supply bag. So that's another one similar to the spinner, also in English and in Spanish. So you roll the dice. Ask a question. Let's see. Oh, find 3 graphic features of nonfiction text. So that's one that we can do at an earlier stage. So we're not even asking them to retell right now. We're just looking for those text features that we have. But these are more questions for you to ask. Of course, I wouldn't pull out all of these things at one time. I would pull out one. All right, we're going to use this one tonight, or we're going to use this one today. And, save them as more tricks in your pocket. All right, so this is the one we're going to make on the green paper. So we're going to cut it out and make a dice, a 3D dice. So if you want to move to a table to make it easier to cut, or if you want to stay where you are, it's totally up to you.
I believe all the materials you need are in the little pouch.
And then Danielle also has some reading material for us.
There's 4 titles in each segment. And I thought you mentioned these.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you guys get some apps. Are they different stacks? Can we pass anything out? Like one per group?
Yeah, one stack per.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. No. I know.
we missed anybody? Everybody has their.
We could try it out once a week.
That's a good idea. I wish I could get my little people to make bicycles. I do. It'll be worth it.
All right. Anybody want to roll the dice? Tell us to find something in our lovely National Geographic. Anybody that's assembled it? Want to roll it? Uh-oh. Might need to add some tape. We run into this problem at school, guys. Okay, somebody. Yep.
You can pretend to roll it.
All right, what did you land on? All right, find one of your scholastics and pretend you're a child or as an adult. Are there any tricky words that you can find in one of your, not scholastics, your National Geographics? Find a tricky word. Think you either as a child or as an adult. Oh, yep. And that was one of our bold words. Any other words in here that might be tricky?
I didn't find a tricky word, but as a child, I'm really intrigued with that.
Oh, the colony. Oh. Yep.
All right, I'll pretend to be the child. I like the fact that this says nose plugs. And on the line for a giraffe, it says nose plugs, and their nose closes up so the branches don't go in them.
All right. Anybody else want to roll their dice? Give us a question. There you go. Roll it.
What is the author's purpose of writing this book?
Oh, all right. What do you think is the hardest part of writing this book? Or one of them, whatever one you're looking at. What's the hardest part? Right, getting the facts. And then the next question. Do you think they'd actually go in the ocean to get these facts? How did they get the facts? And this one goes all over the place. Did this person who made this one really go to the rainforest and the desert and the ocean? Did they really travel to all these places? Oh wait, now we've got pumpkins.
Magic.
All right, any other questions? Anybody else want to roll their dice? All right, find your favorite picture.
The giraffes running in the water.
Dolphins in the water.
Ooh, the dolphin. Ooh, I like that.
Oh, the frog. Yeah, he's cool.
Frog in the fence.
What was one more from the spinner?
What's a question you have now? Okay, so now you've read it. Do you have any more questions? Are you curious about something? Not gonna lie, I would like to know how their nose plugs work. I would like to see that because I can't envision it right now. But I bet I can find a YouTube video on it. Ooh, I got a heavy heart that a giraffe's heart can weigh 25 pounds. How'd you know that? Did you touch it? How'd you know?
Do we really want to find out?
I don't want to find out. No, that's a fact.
Because the giraffe is probably no longer
Okay,
alive.
I can skip that fact. I'll skip it. It's okay.
I want to know about this catfish over here. They look a little messy. But he's studying them. So. All right. So these are some of the things that you would do at home. Show them the different ones. Have them look for them. And you only have to do a few questions at a time. It's going to pique their interest looking at the photos and learning the different facts. So these are all yours to keep. We do ask that any of your scraps, if we could throw them away. Miss Danielle, any closing remarks?
I like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. The weather's getting beautiful. And I know that
I thought you were going to say the weather is so terrible.
I can't blame you, but I do appreciate that you take the time to come out and find ways to advocate for your child as a student. We all know our children best as our kids, but getting to know your child as a student is incredibly important. A lot of times that can be two very distinct things, how our child behaves with us as our child and how our child behaves with students. Two very distinct things. So I appreciate you taking the time to come out and be that advocate for your child as a student, so that they can become lifelong learners and that one day they'll make lots of money and take care of you. Right? So we hope. But the children are on their way back up. As you gather your things for tonight, I know some of you may have left them on the table. Make sure you get all your stuff. There are some items that were left from dinner that you are welcome to take home with you. Those of you that come every month, you know what we do. There's water and pizza, and there's whole pizzas that are left. If you want to take an entire box with you, you're welcome to do that. If you want a slice or two, they're in a bag. And then there's some little salty snacks back there that you're welcome to take with you. But I do appreciate you coming out tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the end of April. After spring break will be the first and second grade session. If you have any pre-K, kindergarten little ones, that's the beginning of April. Okay?
We can talk about writing.
Yes,
That's my fun.
writing, and then we talk about summer.
Yeah.
Yep. So while you gather your things, the children are on their way. Make sure you take your children home and do not leave them for us.